Okay, I
Got
just
the back.
started mine.
Okay. Now I'm just going to record mine and then upload it as well. Upload it, ahead of time there.
All right.
All right. All right. So I'm going to get ready here. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is a pre-recorded episode of Arknolia and the Doctor, taking a look at TV memories. And this is our third installment of the original Star Trek series. And I guess we're right now on the third series right now, I guess you could say there, and the third and final series, from what I understand.
Yes, this will be it,
Yeah.
and there won't be as many really good episodes. In fact, we'll run into a couple of fair ones.
All right. Now the reason,
Like I said,
all right,
there's no such thing as a poor one in my eyes, but some of them come close.
yeah. Now I'm recording this right now, and I'm going to upload it later on because, as I explained to Arknolia, I'm going to be doing some stuff with my brother-in-law, and it usually takes about a couple hours here. So I'm going to do this ahead of time, record this and then upload it on my channel there. And you're live on yours, I understand, right
I'm
now as
live
we
right
speak.
now, but I don't have
Oh,
anybody
nice.
ever show up. So,
All right. It usually takes a while there. Usually later on, if there's not that much viewership at that moment, there'll be later on. We noticed that a few times before.
right.
Yeah, usually happens all the time.
Okay.
All right. All right. Right. So I will let Arknolia talk about the third and final season and the kind of episodes that they had going on at this time, because this was where things started really going awkwardly odd.
Yes.
Needless to say, there. Yeah.
Yes. First one is Spock's brain. This one, this runs into the fair category, but I'll do a quick description on it. Some woman invades the Enterprise, incapacitates everybody, and when they come to, they find Sock in a bed in the sick bay, and his brain's gone.
Wow.
It got stolen.
How in the world are they able to do that? Was there a lot of scars? Was it just leaked out of his earlobes or something like that? Was it teleported or what? Because
Well, I don't remember exactly what the deal is, but McCoy kept his body because he's a Vulcan,
mhm.
pretty much alive while they go searching for this his brain, and
Wow.
they end up on a planet where all the men live on top and all the women live on the bottom inside the
Wow.
planet. And they had stolen the brain because they needed it for the controller, which is the thing that runs things for them in their city, while as men are out there being whatever they are, savages.
Yeah. So basically, so they took the term "let us use your brain to a whole new level."
Yes, and essentially it's just a matter of them trying to get the brain back into Spock so he'll be Spock again.
Yeah.
And like
So
I
no
said,
doubt,
it's a
go ahead.
it's a fair episode. It's not horrible, but it's not good. In fact, it's possibly the worst episode they did. I mean, you see scenes of them walking Spock around like a robot because
Right.
I don't know, it's just
Oh
weird.
my God! And yet that the brain functions like you're the muscles to move, and how you're able to move when you got no brain in your head.
Well, McCoy had fashioned some kind of thing that would make the guy move,
Oh, wow.
but
So literally, Spock has lost his mind, literally, in this episode.
pretty much. And like I said, it's a fair episode. I'm not going to call it poor, although it's awful close,
Yeah.
but it's definitely different.
All right.
Now,
Very
next,
different there.
yeah, the next one's the Enterprise incident, where they are on a secret mission to steal a Romulan cloaking device. So they're going into Romulan space, and they do all kinds of deception to get the Romulans to capture Kirk and Spock. And this is the first time we've seen the Romulans, and they look a lot like Vulcans.
Oh, really?
And so everybody's thinking, oh, Spock, are you, is this part of your people too? And of course,
Relatives or
yeah,
descents?
yeah, relatives, descents, whatever, But
Oh,
they end up eventually stealing the device, and in the process, Spock kind of semi-romances the commander of the Klingon, a
oh,
Romulan vessel, while Kirk's trying to steal the cloaking device, and it it's
there's
reasonably decent.
kind of like the sound, kind of like sounds one of those, you distract, with the guard and such while we make off with this prize item here. The whole
Yeah,
idea there.
that's kind of what it is, and
Yeah.
they basically end up stealing the device and putting it on Star Trek on the
The Enterprise.
Enterprise. Sorry about that. And essentially, that's pretty much how that one goes. It's borderline to being good, but I'll go ahead and call it good
All right.
because it has some elements in it that make it
Make
watchable.
it interesting to watch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and even the Spock's Brain one did, even though it's only a fair episode, it still had things in there interesting to watch. Like I said, I don't see anything in the original series that I would call poor. Just a couple of them that are close.
Yeah.
The next one is the Paradise Syndrome, where they go to a planet that's full of people that are based on the Native American, and there's an obelisk down there that they're trying to figure out why it's there. And then Kirk
Ah.
falls into a trap door inside of the obelisk, and they didn't see him do it, so they're looking around for him. They can't find him, and they have to get back to the Enterprise because there's an asteroid headed for that planet that's going to
Oh,
destroy it if they
wow.
don't try to do something to deflect it. And so that they have to get back, and they said, "Well, we'll come back and look for Spock." In the meantime, a couple of the natives there happen to go into that obelisk, and they see Kirk there, and he's got amnesia from the fall, and
Oh,
so he
wow.
doesn't even know who he is or what he is. But
Wow.
they kind of think, "Oh, he must be from the gods because he's inside this thing and he's coming out." And so basically, they pull him out. One of the natives and he end up hooked up. In fact, I think they got married,
Oh,
and
wow.
I honestly don't remember for sure. And they're living their lives and stuff. And then suddenly they know that this asteroid's coming because the skies are getting dark. It's getting, all the storms and crap are happening.
Yep.
And they say, well, the obelisk thing is supposed to deflect it. And since you're the guy that came from it, you can figure it out. And they go back to the obelisk to get it to do its thing. And Kirk has no idea what to do. He's got
Like,
amnesia.
I don't. Yeah, he's got amnesia. He don't remember shit, let alone his last name. So he's going to need some guidance there. And I'll
And of
bet you the
course, the
natives
natives
be like,
didn't know. And so they start thinking, oh, you really must not be a god. And he and the girl he married are up there, and they start throwing stones at him and trying to stone him.
"Oh,
And
wow.
Spock and McCoy materialize and show up, which they're kind of like, whoa, we got to get out of here. And they run off.
Yep, all the
And
natives.
yeah, and so Spock and McCoy go over there and try to tend to Kirk and the girl that I think is his wife. And they do something. I think Spock does a mind thing to bring his mind back. And then they
Wow.
say, oh, we got to get inside this obelisk because this is what deflects the. Because I deciphered the writings. This is
Yeah.
Spock.
And this is like Indians, as in Native Americans. When you think,
Yes.
yeah, so it's like an Indian reservation planet,
Yeah, that's probably a pretty good description of it.
something like that. Yeah.
But they end up finally getting inside the obelisk, and Spock figures out how to turn it on so it deflects the asteroid, which it does that, and the planet is saved. And then McCoy tells Kirk that the girl that he was with and married, he's not going to be able to save her because she's going to die from her injuries.
Oh, wow.
So that's how they get out of that story, basically.
Wow.
And that's a pretty good episode, I think.
I know Kirk must have been, it felt like really bad. It's like I was married to this gal and I don't remember her and now she's gone.
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. So it's
Yeah.
not going to affect him because he doesn't even really know who she is, other
And
than
keep in mind that this is probably the only time we'll probably see Captain Kirk in marriage because, with a lot of, according to legend, he's been a notable a player, intergalactic player when you think about it.
yep, yep. Next episode was "And the Children Shall Lead." They go to a planet where they have a bunch of people there with families and such, and when they get there, all the adults are dead, and the children are the only ones that are alive. And basically, there's this being that's controlling the children and killed off the parents because he couldn't control them. And he can control the children, and so he kind of figures out a way to get them on board the ship. Well, they're going to get on board the ship. They can't live on the planet by themselves, obviously.
No,
And when they get on the ship, the being's trying to get them to take over the Enterprise so that they can fly him to a planet that he's wanting to go to. And basically, it ends up at the end, the children, the only way they can break the hold of this guy is they show the children pictures of their parents and them having fun and playing and all that. And the children are getting happy. They think that's pretty cool. And then they show them pictures of the parents dead and the children
get
emotionally,
all get upset.
right, force him to stay there, which was they made Kirk and McCoy and Spock prison. Well, actually, they made Kirk and Spock prisoners and had McCoy watch as they put them through all sorts of stuff. One of the things that occurred in this episode, which is actually kind of interesting, is there was a forced kiss between Uhura and Captain Kirk, which is one of those things you just didn't see in the '60s.
Cor-
You know,
Yes.
it was just one of those things that just didn't happen in the '60s, but it did.
What? Yeah, the interracial kiss between
Right,
Lahore.
right.
Yeah, that episode right there was groundbreaking, I should
Yes,
say, because at that time, as you mentioned, nobody has ever done something like that. So, and you got to remember, the racism did not exist on the Enterprise or in the Federation.
right.
Remember, we had an African woman, a Canadian male, an American male, a Scottish male, also had a Oriental male.
And
Everybody
Russian.
else, all these different cultures and Russian working together as a unit.
Exactly.
So Gene Roddenberry also had the idea of like if these all these people can come together and work together as one, you people watching can as just as well. And
Exactly.
which is the main thing behind Star Trek, uniting as one
Exactly.
and breaking down the racial barriers because at that time, there was still segregations between whites and blacks and other cultures as well at around that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next episode. I was having trouble with the word episode. I was having an
Yeah.
episode, I suppose. Was Wink of an Eye, which essentially were speeded up aliens that moved so fast that all you heard was a buzz. You didn't really see them. You couldn't see them because they were moving around so fast. And essentially, they had reached a point where the males couldn't reproduce. I don't recall exactly why, but the females needed breeding stock. So they basically started with Kirk, sped him up so he was in their world, and were trying to establish him as one of the people. And then they had others, but they had to be careful because if any of the people that they speeded up got hurt in any way, they would immediately die.
Wow.
So,
They were forced to take their time.
yeah, and essentially it ended up, of course, they figured out a way to get Kirk back to being slow again, and
Yeah.
essentially,
His normal self.
yeah, and essentially defeated them, put them back on their planet.
Yeah, I
That
see.
that was that was good in its way. That wasn't a bad episode. I I'd call it a good one. The next one was the empath. This one's about a planet where they had a girl there that the beings were trying to make an empath because they needed her to be an empath, and essentially they were trying to get her trained or find out if she had real empathy and could heal people and things of that nature. And so they basically tried to they used Spock and well they used McCoy as it ended up uh, and injured him really bad so they could see if
Wow.
this girl would do something about it because of course when she's an empath she's going to take on the pain and the sores and the whatever. And so it ended up she actually did it and saved McCoy and the people were happy and all of that. And that one's good in its way. That was a good episode. Next one's Elan of Troyes, which is about a one planet and another planet that were constantly fighting with each other, and the way they were going to solve it was the leader of the one planet, the woman, was going to marry the leader of the other planet, the man, and they didn't even know each other. And essentially, they were transporting Elan, which was the girl, to the other planet and trying to get this solved. And of course, they had complications and things going on and such. And it turned out that they finally showed this girl that this is the way you need to go. This is the way it needs to be, and she went with it. That's a fair episode. It's really not a great one, not a bad
Yes.
one, but it wasn't. Let's put it. What did I say? What was my in between one? Reasonably good.
Yeah.
It had its moments, let's say.
I see. Yeah.
Next one's called "Whom Gods Destroy," and essentially this was them going to a planet that the insane were on,
Yeah.
criminally insane actually. And there was one guy there that had learned how to shapeshift, and he had somehow taken over the place. And essentially, the Enterprise was going there with some medicine that's supposed to help these people and cure them. And the guy decided, well, he was a deranged former starship commander,
Oh.
and he is, like I said, he could shapeshift, so he kept changing to people, and they had trouble figuring out is this the real guy or is it the fake guy,
Yeah.
and
We see that so many times before on those kind of scenarios there.
yeah,
But at times it also adds to the drama and the episode as well.
right, and that's a good episode. It's interesting to watch just to see how they get through it. And the
Yeah.
next one was Let That Be Your Last Battlefield.
Ah.
This one involved an alien that was snow white on one side and coal black on the other side.
Oh.
And he was being chased by a law enforcer from the same planet. And when he got there to pick up the guy or whatever, he was white on the other side, black on the opposite side.
Ah.
And they had conflicts that's going to sound familiar between them because they were different. And people were like, "You guys look alike. What's the problem?" He says, "No, he's white on the right and I'm white on the left. He's a
Mm.
bad guy and I'm not. That sort of thing." And
Split personality.
yeah, this was a real big charge at racism, basically.
That's true. Yeah. When you think about it, yeah.
And essentially, they kept trying to take him to the Federation so he could make his case that he could take the guy as his prisoner back to his home planet. And the guy didn't want to do that. He wanted to take him right then.
Uh,
So essentially, they ended up eventually going to that home planet. And when they got there, everybody on the planet was dead because they had all killed each other due to their
wow.
battlefield.
It's and in their insanity as well.
Yeah, and essentially when they got there, that's the hint where the title came from. is they both escaped and went to the planet, and they ended up fighting each other over nothing essentially because they were the only two left, and that's why it was their last battlefield.
Wow.
Yeah, that's actually a good episode, if nothing else, on the subject matter. And telling you if you got to keep doing this stuff, you're going to eventually kill everybody. It's
Yep.
in a sense, it's got, I think, a pretty good message. And
It
next one
does.
was the Mark of Gideon, which there was this planet that they got to that nobody died, everybody lived. There was no disease, nothing.
Wow.
Everything was great. You think wonderful until you figure out that nobody had a place to live because everybody was there.
Yeah. Overcrowding of the population. Where are we going to
Essentially,
put all these people?
and the
And then,
reason, and they kidnapped Kirk, and the reason being is somewhere in his past he had some kind of disease that they had no cure for. So they were trying to
wow.
figure out a way to infect people with it so that some of them would die because the people didn't
Wow.
want to live like that anymore. How would
Yeah.
you like to live where no matter where you go, no matter what you do, you're bumping into somebody?
Yeah.
But
Usually it's somebody you don't like or get along with, let alone have a place to stay because, as I mentioned, that's overpopulation. And that's where all these, projects and slums come in. Fit as many people as you can into one place there.
exactly.
Yeah.
But
And that would
essentially,
be a bit, and that would be a bitch when you think about it there to deal with.
yeah. And of course, this one had the love thing because the girl they were going to infect, they put with Kirk so they could kind of get together and all. Uh, and she was supposed to get it, and she did, and actually end up getting it. But they cured her. But they went ahead and
Wow.
put it out for the planet so people would start getting it. They'd let some of them die, I suppose.
Wow.
Never made it clear. Uh, Actually, that's a decent episode. I'd call it a good one.
Yeah.
Next one was one called That Which Survives. And basically, they go to a planet that's pretty much abandoned. And they go down there and start investigating. And one of the people goes off. And this woman shows up and says, I am for whatever the guy's name was, touches him, he dies.
Wow.
And essentially, another one beams up on the ship and finds somebody and does the same thing. Says, I am for whatever the guy's name was, touches him, he dies.
Wow.
And
That is something.
they go through whatever all they go through, and they find out that this woman is being generated by some kind of a computer that's supposed to protect the planet, and she's essentially trying to protect the planet. And she came there, and while the three or four of them were standing there, and she says, I am for Sulu. And she goes to touch Sulu, and Kirk gets in front of her to stop her. She touches Kirk, and nothing happens. And they figure out from that well, she's made specifically for certain people. So essentially, they end up. That's how they fight her off. Is each time she shows up, they ask her who you here for, and she'll tell them, I'm for Kirk or whoever, and the others will protect him and keep her from touching him. And they eventually
Wow.
solve the problem, but you know how that goes.
That's right.
And after that was, oh, I forgot to tell you, I'd,
Yeah.
I'd call that a good episode, I think.
Yes.
Uh, the next one is The Lights of Zatar, which involves a bunch of beings that are lights. That
Oh, mites.
lights.
Oh, lights. Okay, I thought you said mites for a second. I thought these were like little bugs there for a second, but these are like lights,
Yeah, just
as in
flashing little
shiny
lights,
little,
right?
like a little flashing orbs. Needless to say.
And essentially, as you
Hmm.
go through the episode, it turns out that they're beings that's all that's left of them, but they want to live out their lives, and so they're trying to figure out, oh, let's try to see who we can invade because there's certain people that are a certain way that they can get into them and live their life through these people, but in the process, obviously, they destroy the people.
Oh,
So essentially, they spend the episode trying to figure out how do we get rid of those lights and save the people. That's
kind of like living your life through somebody else.
Yeah, that's a reasonably decent episode. It's not wonderful, but it's not bad.
Kind
Next,
of makes sense when you think about it.
yeah, next one is Requiem for Methuselah, which they go to a planet and they find this guy there by the name of Flint that they need some minerals on this planet and he's going to get them for them and or let them get them or whatever. And as they're doing all of this, they discover that this guy is interesting because they saw a painting that looked, well, Spock knew it was Leonardo da Vinci, but he said this is a recent painting, and it turns out that the guy is like 3,000, 4,000 years old, never
Oh,
aged, and he was Leonardo da Vinci, he was Brahms,
wow.
he was lots of other people, and just kept changing, I guess, as it went on,
Wow.
and decided eventually to I got to leave Earth, and went to this planet where he'd been living. I hadn't been very long, and he created, I don't know whether you'd call it an android or what, for a companion that was a girl, but she didn't know she was a companion or a
Yeah.
robot. And her and Kirk kind of, well, they say fall
Had a
in
little.
love.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
Kirk being the player again.
yeah, Kirk wanted to keep this one though.
Oh,
And
wow.
of course, the old guy didn't want that to happen because that's
Yep.
his girl. And then they
I see.
discover
Yeah.
and they discover she's a cyborg or a whatever,
Yeah.
and Kirk wants her to come with him anyway, and the guy wants her to stay, and so they end up, telling him decide, 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 and it's like she wants a little of both, I guess you'd say, and it essentially kills her, and
Wow.
so of course, they figure out when they get on board the ship that the guy's starting to age normally and will eventually die at this point. And so it's like, well, that's kind of what he wanted anyway. So that's actually not a bad episode. I'd call it good.
Yeah.
It's an interesting to watch. Then the next one was The Way to Eden, which this is the one where they had 7 people that had stolen a shuttlecraft and they were looking
Yeah.
for Eden. And so essentially, the Enterprise caught them, took them on board, and it turns out one of the 7 was the son of some big shot ambassador or whatever. So they had to treat him with kid gloves. And of course, these
Wow.
guys are what you'd call space hippies. I mean, they were, essentially that's what they were.
Space hippies. Hey, man, let's do some space lewds and fly to the stars. 3,000 light years from home.
That,
Could
that
remember that Rolling Stones song?
actually it's 2,000, but that's cool.
2000. Yeah, that's right. But you get the idea there.
Yeah,
Man, I'm tripping in space, dude. That's what I think of when I think of the word hippies there.
but that's essentially what was going on with that one. And one of the other people turned out to
Yeah.
be a former love interest of Chekhov's that
Oh,
she kind of, well, he kind of, and she kind of, they were talking. It was like, why are you with these people? And she was like, well, I want to be with these people because, and it was the typical hippie stuff. Or it
oh
would,
yeah.
it's the only
All
way I
the
could
peace,
equate
the
it.
love
Yeah,
there.
it's the only
Yeah.
way I could equate it. But they ended up finding a planet that was apparently Eden, but it wasn't. It seemed like Eden. And
Yeah.
these people, the seven, managed to get hold of the shuttlecraft again, and they got down to the planet. They found out it wasn't all it was supposed to be because all the fruits and stuff were poisoned,
Wow.
and it was killing them. And well, it killed a couple of them, I think, and some of the others were like, "Oh, it wasn't all it was cracked up to be, I guess," and they took them
I believe,
back on.
man.
And that's a good episode to watch. It's an interesting episode. And the next one was one called the Cloud Minders, which essentially he needed to get some plague fighting minerals from this planet that were done below. And the reason they called it Cloud Minders is because the people down below took care of the mines and did all the things that they needed to do. And the people up above ruled, and they were the cloud minders. They were in the clouds, and the people in the clouds were like serene and stuff, and the people on the ground were always in a rage. They were just, I don't know how else to describe them other than they were always angry, and they
Piss,
they got nothing, you know.
pissed off,
And the cloud minders got
pissed off all
everything.
24/7.
Yeah, and the cloud minders had everything, and they had nothing essentially.
Jealousy,
But it turned out there was some
entitlement as
kind of
well.
a gas in the mines that was causing this. And so Kirk was trying to convince them that they need to give these guys gas masks so they'll go back to being regular people, and they
Yeah.
could live up in the clouds or on wherever they wanted to live. It wouldn't be a problem. And that's essentially what that episode was about. It was, yeah, I'd call it good. It wasn't a bad episode. I'd call it good. Next one was the Savage Curtain. Uh, well, as the Enterprise is typical to do, they invaded the space of
Yeah.
guys that didn't want them there. And so they grabbed Kirk, Spock, and put them on a planet and conjured up Abraham Lincoln and a Vulcan, but I forgot the name of the Vulcan. That
Uh,
was one of the great Vulcans of all times, kind of like Abraham Lincoln was to, Kirk. Essentially, they pulled them from their minds. And they were supposed to fight good versus evil. And the other side had four of the evil people in history. And so they had to
uh,
figure out how to fight these people and all of that. And essentially, it's another one of those stories where, of course, the good wins. And rather than kill the people like the others wanted, uh, they were like, oh, we're not going to kill them, but, you know, we've beat them. Let them go back wherever. And of course, the
let them go back
alien,
to shame.
yeah, of course, the
Let them go
aliens were,
back with their heads, with their tail tucked between their legs once again.
yeah, and essentially the aliens were like, hey, maybe you are good after all. We'll spare you. And they let
Yeah,
Kirk and Spock go back.
that's good. Yeah, definitely interesting there.
Yeah, that was a good
All right.
episode.
Yeah.
Um, Next one is called All Our Yesterdays. And essentially,
Uh,
what this one was they travel to a planet that's fixing to blow up, explode, whatever. And they get
wow.
down there and they go to the what's called the library, and they only find one person. And the guy is just saying, "Hey, I'm not going. We're not going. Everything's good. We're cool." And Kirk hears a lady scream, so he runs and he jumps into what turns out to be a time portal. And he's suddenly transported to like 17th century whatever on this planet. And of course, McCoy and Spock were, how do we get to him? And the guy says, you can't. And so they jump through, but they end up in the Ice Age. And essentially, it's one of those things where they jump through unprepared, as what's the words were used, so that they could only live there for a few hours. Well, after Kirk solves whatever the problem was, he ends up getting back because he was helped back, and he essentially tries to get that guy there to help him find Spock and McCoy, and he
Ah,
he he ends up. They end up coming back, but Spock, because he had gone back in the Ice Age, he reverted to how the Vulcans were back in those days, which were savages and such. And
wow.
it took a lot to get him back, but they eventually did get him back. And when they got
Oh, they
back,
were, and boy, were they in a shock.
yeah, and when they got back, of course, Spock went back to himself and such. Um,
Oh,
they were basically saying, "Hey, you got to go with us." And the guy says, "No, I can't. I can't." And he says, "I've been prepared." And he jumps to the port, and there's nobody left. Basically, they prepared for their end time by going back in history.
wow.
That's actually a pretty good episode. Not
Yeah.
bad. And then the last one is
The
called
very last episode.
It's called Turnabout Intruder, and essentially this one's about uh, the Enterprise going to a planet where these two scientists are studying it and all, and they get on the planet, and Kirk ends up alone with the girl, and he sees an alien device there, and he's over there investigating. She hits a button and freezes him, and he's frozen in
Wow.
the alien device. And then she goes over there and gets in the device, pushes another button. Next thing you know, Kirk's mind and such is in her body. Her mind and
Wow.
such is in his body because she had
Oh
this
my
thing
God.
about she had to be a Star Wars star. She had to be a starship
Commander?
commander. She just
Oh,
had to do it, and this was the only way she knew to do it. And
oh my
so
goodness.
she switched him out.
Sheep is seeking the easy way out instead of learning all the routines and stuff like Kirk did.
Right. And essentially, she had such mental problems, which was the reason that they wouldn't make her a captain, that
Wow.
she kind of belied herself on board because she's wanting to kill the doctor, kill this person, kill that person, and she'd
Oh
fly off the
man.
handle at little things and such that. So
Lose
everybody,
her shit, they need us to say.
yeah, and so everybody kind of figured out, hey, this isn't Kirk, and they finally figured out a way to get him back. Uh,
Wow.
but
Kind of
essentially,
like a go
that's
ahead.
what I
Kind
would.
of like the trans, kind of like someone like one of the most ultimate transgender episodes ever. When you think about that, I mean, a man becoming a woman, woman becoming a man. Not in a physical form, but in a mental state. When you think about it, there.
Yeah, and this episode, well, I would rank as fair if it wasn't for Spock's brain. This would be the worst episode because it really put women in a bad light. I mean, of
Mm.
course, this was one woman with mental problems and all, and they,
And not all of them. But then
yeah,
again, that's how people are going to perceive people. And when you think about it, what it was kind of episodes like that that often put up people with mental disabilities in in the hot seat there because there's this stigma that happens with the mental ill individuals out there. They think they don't know if this person is going to snap at 1 minute, start killing people. They don't know if they're going to start hallucinating or hearing voices instead, and that scares regular people.
yeah,
Because a lot of weight, and plus now in these days of political correctness, you know, uh, an episode like that was sure it was going to draw some heat from all these activists out there,
it
these
may not have
SJW.
got shown.
Really?
You never know.
Yeah. So it didn't actually didn't get shown after all, or
No, no.
not, or so.
In this day and age, if it had been released now,
Uh,
it may not have
it would
got
have been
shown.
no, no. They would have to condemn it like they condemned all these other movies out there, from the past.
Yeah,
You know.
but
So that's
I guess then we can, in conclusion, I would say if I was going to tell you season one episodes that are kind of like, oh, you got to watch this,
yes.
probably Where No Man Has Gone Before, I'm reading through them.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a lot of them that are pretty good, but I'm trying to
Wow.
figure out the ones that are the
That
best.
stand out the most. Yeah.
Yeah, and City on the Edge of Forever, definitely. And Devil in the Dark is a good one.
Yes.
It's kind of hard for me to point out just a few because season one's full of them. It's got a lot of pretty good ones in there. And
Yeah.
season two's got some pretty good ones too, but it's starting to fall off a little bit, but
Yeah.
not
So
yet.
whereas season three, the third and final one, kind of like goes in this little AWOL direction there.
Yeah, essentially, this is when the network executives are trying to run things. And although
Yeah.
there are some episodes that are landmark for what they are, uh,
Yeah.
it's still they're not hard to watch, but some of them are like
Cheesy.
uh,
Cheesy as hell.
it's kind of like okay.
Yeah.
But
Cheesy.
I'd still recommend a
That's the
couple
word
of them.
for that. That's one word we're recommending right now. It's cheesy to watch.
Yeah, but it's still not to the point where it's like, oh, don't watch this. This is bad. 'Cause there's none of
No.
those. There's just some of them that you're kind of okay.
Question.
Yeah, but among those last ones, I will say that Let That Be Your Last Battlefield was definitely because of the subject matter worth watching. That was well done.
Um,
One of the two guys
yeah.
that was the aliens was Frank Gorshin, and you know who
Yes.
that is, right?
Yeah. The Riddler on the
Yes,
Batman series.
yes.
I think I remember seeing that sometime a long time ago there.
It's kind of funny because in a sense he acts like the Riddler.
Yes. But bring this some of that character into this new character. I guess that's how it was done.
Yeah, every once in a while you could see him do stuff going, Riddler. You know, because he did it about the
Oh
same
yeah.
time. Because this series
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Batman were on generally around the same time.
Yeah, but of course I think it was on different TV stations.
I
I
think
think
so.
Batman was on ABC network and Star Trek was on NBC.
I believe that is correct.
Yeah,
And actually, The Way to Eden was decent.
yeah, yeah,
So season three's not like, oh, I'm not going to watch that. There's still some worth watching. And the beauty of
yeah,
watching the original series was, other than the two-part of the menagerie, none of these episodes were connected in such a way that if you missed the episode before, something was going to get away with you in the next one. They they
yeah.
they were standalone. You could watch them.
Yeah. All these episodes stand on their own. They have their own individual ideas and stuff, and there was no continuation of this or continuation of that or this coming up at the last minute there or this theory coming up from a previous episode.
They might touch on something from previous episodes, but it's little, and it doesn't affect anything, and it doesn't make you go, oh, I wonder what happened
Yeah,
back then. You can get away with pretty much watching all of them and not missing a beat. You know, which is generally
yeah,
not true of some of the other Star Treks. You almost got to watch them in order,
yeah.
especially Deep Space
That's
Nine.
true
You
as well. Yeah.
pretty much got to watch that in order, but not
Oh yeah.
totally.
Or
Um,
did
or Voyager.
did you ever watch the other Star? Well, or Voyager, or Next Generation, or the ones that came after? Like I know the rebooted Star Trek movies with that was directed by J.J. Abrams in the early 2000s, and they really definitely gave the new gave a new look at the how the original crew was assembled. But however, according to the but the also got to keep in mind when you watch the original series and the J.J. Abrams versions, you notice, of course, as we mentioned, the technology, the graphics, the CGIs, is a lot more intense, a lot more powerful than what we have with the original series. But then again, you got to remember, you know, this was the they didn't have this kind of technology back in the 1960s.
Wasn't available. I haven't
Yeah, it
seen
wasn't
some of
available,
those.
and it was not even thought about it.
Well, I haven't seen some of those because I kind of pretty much quit going to movies. Uh,
Mm.
I was trying to remember what the last movie saw was. I think it was Star Trek 2 or
Yeah,
3. I forget which one. When they first
mm,
came out, so that tells you how long it's been.
yeah, yeah. The movies, yeah, and we're talking about now. I want to ask about the March Star Trek the motion picture. Those are the movies that came out, like the Wrath of
Right,
Khan, the Voyage Home, the
right,
Search for Spock. That came about because of all the talk, all the resurrecting popularity of the original series here, and that kind of like provoked the movie studios to, hey, let's assemble the original cast together. Let's have them journey on this here on their first voyage ever together there,
right. Uh,
and that and also this is around the time when science fiction was like one of the big things around those periods. Remember, thanks to the first Star Wars, we saw a lot of course, we saw the first Superman with Christopher Reeve, and we,
right.
of course, as I mentioned, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and a couple others as well. That kind of like continued the science fiction franchise for a longer number of years,
Yes, and
and
it's,
and of course, later on during the 80s, whichever Star Trek movie came out with the original cast, they were always directed by Leonard Nimoy,
yeah.
so that yeah, I guess William Shatner directed one. I guess what I forgot what it was. It was but I forgot the name because there was so many of them at that point. And then of course, later on during the 90s, it would later merge with the Next Generation
Right.
cast, and we would eventually see Kirk and Jean-Luc Picard on the one movie there, kind of like a crossover when you think about it there. And eventually, Kirk will later dies, and I guess what it was, Generations or something else. If I'm
I
correct,
believe that was the one. I honestly
yeah.
don't remember.
And of course, Star Trek: The Next Generation would last way longer than the original series. There was
Yeah, I think that one was
up
eight
like
or
100
ten
years.
seasons.
Yeah, I did. And of course, we did that spawned, of course, later on Deep Space Nine, which is this crew stuck in this one station in the same spot for God knows how long. And
Right.
it's going to kind of drive you nuts when you look at the same galaxies, the same stars. So kind of like I remember being told that because they're stuck in this station for 24/7, they're going to be the crew is going to be a little bit more edgier
Yeah. Yeah.
because of this. And then of course we have Voyager, which details the whereabouts of the Starship Voyager, whereas Captain and, what's her damn name? She's played by Kate Mulgrew, Janeway. Janeway,
Yeah.
that's her name. They're trying to get back home, but they keep running into this situation, that situation, and then later on, I guess they came up with Enterprise with the guy who played in Quantum Leap a couple years before that.
Yeah, and that one they
He
were
was
supposed to try to do. Oh, this is what happened to get us to the original Star Trek.
Yeah, that was way before the original there. And
Yeah.
then, of course, now we have Discovery on the three Star Trek programs on the streaming channel CBS All Access. We have Discovery, we have Lower Decks, which is an animated comedy, kind of like in the vein of South Park, but I don't know if it has any vulgar or any of that stuff there. And of course, Picard, the continuations of Jean-Luc Picard after he retires from the Federation. He still finds himself in little situations with the new crew, and one of the guest people who get involved with him is Seven and Nine, played by Jerry O'Ryan from the Voyager series there.
Yeah. Well, I don't. I'll probably watch them eventually, but I haven't seen Discovery, Picard, or the one that you were talking about, the animated one yet. Because
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I've
I'm
only
kind of
seen
listening to what a real true Star Trek aficionado said about that, and it is Joe Cronin. He
yeah.
said that both those episodes are are both those shows are kind of, well, they're hard to watch, but they're Star Trek, but they're not Star Trek. They're
Mm.
not that good, but if you want to stick with,
Kind of iffy on the, kind
yeah,
of if, yes,
and essentially that was enough of an opinion based on, his obvious love for Star Trek that it didn't look
yeah,
like something I wanted to see.
wow,
I'll eventually get around to it, but, I didn't
right.
jump out to see him because of that. But,
I
you know,
see, yeah. Well, so I guess, the Star Trek, we still have Star Trek conventions such as we have with Star Wars conventions. I
right.
remember I mentioned this one time before. There was a mashup between a crossover between the 11th Doctor and his companions and the Next Generation crew. It was for a comic book series where they were supposed to take on both the Borg and the Cybermen who have been eventually formed a bond together to get rid of humanity, make everything have machine, cyber, everything, all that such there.
I'm surprised the Daleks weren't involved in that one.
I know that was something there. And I was wondering what would have happened if there was a Star Trek and a Star Wars crossover by chance.
That would be interesting, actually.
Wow. It'll be interesting to think about. It's like, well, actually, there is kind of a crossover between those two there because have you seen these Uber Eat commercials as of late? They both star Mark Hamill from Star Wars and Patrick Stewart from Star Trek.
Huh, I hadn't seen those.
I've seen a few of those. I've seen them on Twitter there. I've seen them on the TV. You know,
Yeah, I hadn't seen those.
they're right. That's so. Yeah, I've seen. They're pretty tripped out to look at. When you think about it, talk about a massive crossover. When you talk, I mean, like two sci-fi icons in one room together, playing some sort of I guess it was one of those air hockey things or something like that. I'm not too sure. And he talking about Uber Eats, this and that, and here, there. It's a commercial, basically, no matter what. But whoever came up with that idea of having those two together pretty much had it spot on.
Yeah,
You know. So if you watch your TV, those commercials come out, definitely check them out. They're worth interesting to see.
yeah, that they are.
Yeah.
Well, I just
Yeah.
saw a
So
list. I just saw a list of the seven. No, it's six.
seven what?
Six movies that were based on the original Star Trek.
Yes.
The
There are a
first
lot.
one,
There were a lot of them.
the first one was Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yes.
Then the second one was
Yeah,
named Star Trek Two. Well, yeah,
the
The
Wrath
Wrath
of
of
Khan.
Khan. Then Star
Number
Trek
three
Three,
was
Search for Spock.
the search for Spock, and then Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home.
Right. Star Trek Five was The Final Frontier. And
Hmm.
then six was The Undiscovered Country, which was the one you talked about where they mixed them
Yeah.
with the Next Generation.
Yes. The crossover.
And those are, each is good in its own way. It's got good things
Yeah.
about them.
Yeah.
There's not what I'd call a bad one in the bunch. Although the very first one of the bunch might be the worst, but it's still a good film.
Mm.
Have you seen
My,
all
but I
six?
remember. No, I haven't. The only one I remember watching the original motion picture one when
Right.
it was on cable. I think when we still had HBO at that time or Cinemax. But I also did watch lots of the Voyage Home winner because of the fact they go back. They did time travel there
Yeah.
back to around the 1980s and see this Enterprise. Although these are wild costumes up there, had its comical moments there, especially when Spock, and while Kirk and Spock were like wearing while Spock wearing his course wearing this here robe, He wanted to study these mammals, the little whales there, and he goes right into the tank and swimming. And you see Kirk's face is like, "What the hell, Spock?"
Yeah, yeah. That was good,
That
actually. Uh,
was interesting. Yeah.
that
So
you need to
it was a
sometime.
trip.
You need to sometime when you get a chance to kind of watch them. Again, you don't have to watch them in order. Well, I don't
Yeah.
know though. Maybe two and three
When they're on
because,
TV. Yeah.
but two and three you might have to because two is when, well, essentially Spock dies, and three is where they go looking for him and discover him somehow survived because he was on the planet where they shot something in there. They call it the Genesis Project or something like that.
Yes.
The
Yes.
funny thing about that movie is Christopher Lloyd as a Klingon.
Wow. That's something there.
Yeah, you can just see him doing it. Oh, Kirk, you search for the Genesis Project. Yeah,
Oh boy.
your captain.
That sounds like something like Doctor Who when you think about it there.
Yeah, but he kind of breaks into his Reverend Jim,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of weird
Ah.
to see a Klingon doing Reverend Jim, which I'm
Mm.
sure you know who Reverend Jim is.
Yeah. Correct. Yep. Jim Jones.
No.
Oh.
You ever see Taxi?
No, the movie? No, I
No,
haven't.
no, no,
No,
no.
actually, I haven't.
The TV show.
Oh, I never really watched TV that much. I was always either in my room listening to music or doing other things there, or at that time working on homework
Well,
because
they had a
I was
character on
in
that
high
show
school at that time.
that Christopher Lloyd played called Reverend Jim, who was
Ah,
basically a burned out hippie, and
ah,
he was driving one of the taxis, and he was a fun character actually. He was
ah.
interesting. He definitely made an impact on that show.
Oh yeah. Of
But
course, of course, he would later make an impact with Back to the Future parts one, two, and three.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And he's still cited for that role more than ever than his role on Taxi when it come to think of it.
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. But like I
Yeah.
said, it was funny to see him as a Klingon commander.
I know. That's true there. So I guess, so we still have Star Trek, the original series, still a favorite. Of course, now, as we all know, because of all the movies, the series that came afterwards, it now is referred to the original series nowadays. It's often nicknamed that. Of course, we cannot forget the animated series, which ran in the 1970s,
Which
which was a,
actually stayed pretty close to the original series. It
absolutely, yes, with the original voices as well, the actors there.
yeah. So that one is almost a continuation of the original series.
Yeah, absolutely there. And it was, of course, done by the boys at Filmation, which did an animated series for Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids,
Yeah.
Masters of the Universe, so then around the 80s. The Brady Kids would spotlight the adventures of the Brady Bunch children there, as well as anything, the Archies, Archie Andrews and his crew there. They, ma- they did a lot of Archie Andrews cartoon series. There, Bicentennial Archie, everything's Archie. The Archie shows. I guess that it was called. God knows they did a whole bunch of that time there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Now, so Star Trek once again is going to carry on along with Doctor Who and Star Wars. There, one of the big three sci-fi franchises, as I christened before many times.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So I guess we'll end this episode right now. I got to get going and do some things here. That's why I wanted to get this done ahead of time here.
Okay.
So okay, so I'm going to upload this after I'm done here, and then tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Central Time, we'll be discussing the arrival of the Fab Four.
Yeah, and we'll kind of get into that, and I'm pretty sure that's going to carry on to the next one. I don't
Yes.
think we can get it all done in 1 hour.
No, we can't because the life because the stories, the theories of the Beatles, it's gonna the, pe- so much in the Beatles you could talk about for ages
Yeah,
when you look at it from how their manager was, all the controversies that surrounded them, from the Paul is dead to the breakup to what John Lennon said about them being bigger than Jesus Christ. There was a lot of things that we could discuss with those guys,
yeah. Not even get into the
and how
well. We're going to get into the music, but
absolutely, yeah, because they did a lot. They did a lot of great, great songs. They're great albums, and
absolutely.
all right there. So once again, for myself, and Arknolia Strokebean. This is Arknolia and the Doctors. Our last installment of this original Star Trek series. All right, everybody. You have guys have a good one. All right.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow at 5.
All right then. Once again, subscribe to Arknolia Strokebean's channel. Subscribe to my channel, and also check me out tomorrow night on Real Swag TV soon afterwards. All right.
All righty. We'll talk
All
to you
right.
tomorrow.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.